The Ghost of Cell Block 9. Hit that subscribe button before the lights go out, because once we step inside this place, nothing is guaranteed. The whisper cuts through the dark like a rusted blade. The story begins on a humid October night in Sao Paulo, the kind of night where the air presses against the skin, thick and suffocating, as if trying to warn you to turn back. Police sirens scream through the empty streets, chasing a single figure darting between corners and alleyways. That figure is Marcos Nove Santana, a name that would one day echo through the walls of Carandiru like a myth whispered between the brave and the doomed. But tonight, he is just a man running for his life. Marcos sprints barefoot across broken pavement, blood seeping from a cut on his heel, but he doesn't stop. The city feels alive, as if watching him. Helicopter lights slice through the sky, illuminating his silhouette like a target painted across the asphalt. Moments earlier, officers raided a warehouse tied to one of Sao Paulo's most dangerous criminal rings. Marcos wasn't the boss, but he was close enough to the crime scene to be swallowed by it. The chase ends in a narrow alley behind a shuttered market. Boxes topple, metal clangs, and handcuffs snap shut. The officers shout commands. Marcos raises his hands in a slow, defeated gesture. He doesn't argue. He doesn't beg. He just whispers, "I didn't pull the trigger. It doesn't matter. Not tonight. Not to them." Within days, he is processed, judged, sentenced, and transported, not to any prison, but to Carandiru, the most feared penitentiary in Latin America. The prison appears like a concrete monster rising out of the outskirts of Sao Paulo, gray, cracked, and sprawling across acres of land once meant to be a hospital. Its corridors are dim, its cells overcrowded, and the atmosphere is thick with the weight of thousands of men fighting for space, dignity, or simply survival. When Marcos steps inside Pavilion 9, a guard leans in close and says, "If you want to leave this place alive, don't look anyone in the eyes." Marcos nods, but he doesn't follow the advice. He observes everything. The wooden shanks hidden under mattresses, the coded hand gestures exchanged between groups, the way the older inmates command the younger ones without speaking a word. He learns fast. He studies faster. That's how legends begin. His bunkmate is a thin, nervous teenager named Lucas, serving time for stealing food from a market. Their cell smells of sweat and mildew. Lucas warns Marcos that Pavilion 9 functions under its own laws, not the ones enforced by guards, but the ones written by inmates. People here disappear, Lucas whispers. Not even the guards ask questions. But Marcos is different. He has always been able to read people, their fear, their anger, their motives. And it doesn't take long for him to notice something wrong. A shadow moves through the pavilion at night, not a man, but a presence. Someone powerful, someone feared, someone who seems to control everything without being seen. The inmates call him O Fantasma, the ghost. No one knows who he is. No one admits to speaking with him. But everyone follows his rules. Marcos hears whispers that the ghost mediates disputes, controls certain cell blocks, and keeps the fragile balance that prevents Pavilion 9 from descending into constant chaos. The idea of such a figure fascinates Marcos. He has always survived by understanding power, and Carandiru is full of it, raw, ugly, and unrestrained. But on his 7th night, he stumbles onto something that changes everything. A commotion rises near the end of the hallway, low voices, hurried footsteps, then a thud. Marcos and Lucas exchange a glance. "Stay here," Lucas begs, but Marcos steps out into the dim corridor lit by flickering bulbs. A group of inmates stands around a door, cell 9B, whispering frantically. It wasn't supposed to happen. Should we tell the ghost? No. He'll find out on his own. Marcos approaches cautiously. The men stare at him with suspicion, but he keeps walking until he reaches the door. It's cracked open. He pushes it with 2 fingers. Inside, he sees an inmate lying unconscious on the floor, maybe injured, maybe worse, and beside him, a small notebook stained with something dark. Marcos crouches and flips it open. Inside are names, dozens of them. Next to each name is a symbol, circles, triangles, cross lines, codes, schedules, messages. It's a map of the prison's underground structure. He realizes instantly. This notebook belongs to the ghost, and someone has just stolen it. Marcos hears footsteps behind him, heavy, approaching slowly. When he turns around, every inmate in the hallway is staring at him. Quiet, tense, afraid. Lucas whispers from the corner, "Marcos, you shouldn't have touched that." But it's too late. Because in Carandiru, secrets are worth lives. And Marcos has just uncovered the wrong one. Carandiru, the making of a legend. The rain hit the metal roofing like an angry rhythm, echoing through the corridors of Carandiru as the guards escorted Rafa dos Santos deeper into Pavilion 9. Every few steps, he caught a glimpse of faces watching him from the shadows, some curious, some cold, some calculating. Here, every stare was a question. Are you a threat or are you prey? Rafa walked with his head steady, not high, not low, just enough to show he wasn't afraid, even though his heartbeat felt like it was punching its way out of his chest. His first night was sleepless. The sounds alone were enough to keep any man awake. Clanging bars, distant shouts, whispered deals, small arguments that flared and died out before turning into something worse. Carandiru didn't give newcomers time to settle. It watched, tested, and measured them. What Rafa didn't know was that trouble had already begun forming around him. 2 days into his sentence, word spread that the stolen money from the bank robbery, the one he swore he didn't commit, had never been recovered. Inside Carandiru, rumors didn't stay rumors for long. They became currency, debt, and danger. One of the prison's most influential inmates, a man they called Velho Caesar, requested a meeting. Caesar was older, calm, respected, the kind of man whose voice never rose, but whose decisions shaped entire wings of the prison. Rafa had heard stories about him long before being locked up. Some said he used to run protection rings outside. Others claimed he'd been a community organizer who fell into corruption scandals, but maintained an odd kind of popularity. No one really knew the full truth, but in Carandiru, his word carried weight. "Sit," Caesar said, motioning to a plastic chair across from him in the communal area. Rafa obeyed, trying not to show the tension tightening his shoulders. "I heard about your case," Caesar began. "They say the money vanished. They say you know more than you claim." "I told the court what I know," Rafa replied carefully. "I wasn't the one who took it." Caesar studied him in silence. Behind him, 2 younger men watched Rafa with suspicious eyes. "You survived the outside accusations," Caesar said. "But in here, rumors can be more dangerous than bullets." Rafa swallowed hard. "I don't have any money." Caesar leaned back, tapping a finger lightly against the table. "Then someone set you up. And if that's true, they'll want to make sure you stay silent." It felt like the air in the room thinned. For a moment, Rafa didn't know what to say. Then Caesar added, "There's a way to survive here. But first, you need to tell me who would benefit from you taking the fall." Rafa hesitated, not because he didn't know, but because saying the name out loud felt like stepping off a bridge without knowing if water or concrete waited below. "Marchow," he finally whispered. "He planned the robbery. I backed out a week before it happened. The next thing I know, the police are at my door. Someone tipped them off." Caesar nodded slowly, as if this matched a puzzle piece he already had. "That man has friends in here," Caesar warned. "Friends who owe him favors." Rafa felt his stomach twist. He had always tried to avoid getting too close to the criminal world. But the world had a way of dragging you in, even when you thought you were taking the safe path. 2 weeks later, the tension around him thickened like humidity before a storm. A guard gave him a subtle warning. "Watch yourself today. Someone put your name in the wrong conversation." He didn't say more. Guards weren't supposed to reveal information like that. But his eyes told the rest of the story. That afternoon, during a routine cell search, a small metal object was found beneath Rafa's mattress. A makeshift blade. Rafa froze. "That's not mine." The guard didn't even look surprised. "That's not what the report will say." A disciplinary consequence could have thrown him into solitary or shifted him to another wing controlled by factions that didn't like outsiders. He knew exactly what this meant. Someone was trying to destabilize him, isolate him, make him vulnerable. As the guards escorted him toward the administrative office, Caesar stepped out from a hallway. Hold on, Caesar said to the escorting officer. I requested him for kitchen duty today. The paperwork should be in the system. The guard checked his radio, paused, then nodded. Fine. He's yours for now. When the guard walked away, Caesar turned to Rafa. They're getting impatient, Caesar said softly. Someone wants you removed before you can talk. Why do you even care? Rafa snapped, frustration breaking through his fear. Because injustice is a dangerous fire, Caesar answered calmly. Once it burns one man, it spreads. And because your case, it messes with the balance in here. Rafa held his breath as Caesar continued. You need to stay close. There's more to this story than you think. How much more? Rafa asked. Caesar's eyes narrowed. Enough to shake more than just Carandiru. That night, a new clue emerged, something subtle, something that didn't make sense at first. A guard slipped a folded note under Rafa's food tray during dinner. 4 words. Marchow was here today. But Marchow was supposed to be serving time in a different state. Rafa read the note twice. His hands trembled. If Marchow had influence strong enough to move around the system, then Rafa was trapped in a far bigger web than he imagined. And the next move wouldn't come from him. It would come for him. The truth inside the walls. The following morning arrived heavy and silent, the kind of silence that warned of something shifting beneath the surface. Even the usual noise of inmates calling out during roll count felt muted. Rafa sensed it in the air, a tightening pressure, an expectation. Someone was waiting for him to make a mistake. Someone wanted him gone. But he also had something he didn't have before, a message, a warning, and a suspicion that stretched far outside Carandiru's walls. Rafa headed toward the kitchen for his shift. The space was humid, filled with the smell of boiling beans and disinfectant. As he scrubbed metal trays, he noticed Caesar walking in. The older man nodded at the supervising guard, a gesture that kept the guard at ease, as if this was just another routine conversation. Caesar approached slowly. You got the note? He asked, voice low. Yes, Rafa replied. Are you sure it's real? Caesar shrugged. Notes don't fall from the sky in a place like this. Someone wanted you to know Marchow has influence, maybe too much. Rafa felt a pulse of anger beneath his fear. He framed me, and now he's trying to finish the job. It's possible, Caesar said. But the question isn't who anymore. It's why. Rafa paused mid-scrub. I already told you. He wanted someone to take the fall for the money. Caesar leaned closer. It's not about the money. Rafa looked up, confused. Caesar continued. Your case had gained attention outside. Advocacy groups, journalists, people who believe your conviction might have been rushed. My lawyer mentioned that once, Rafa muttered. I didn't think it mattered. It matters, Caesar said. It matters to the people who want certain details buried. There's something in your case that someone doesn't want reopened. Rafa narrowed his eyes. What are you saying? Caesar inhaled slowly. I'm saying this goes deeper than Marchow. That night, a commotion erupted near Pavilion 9. Guards rushed down the corridor, radios buzzing. Rafa pressed against the bars of his cell, trying to catch a glimpse of what was happening. Voices echoed, fast, urgent, chaotic. Then he heard it. Someone from outside tried to enter the visitation log with a false ID. A fake visitor. Trying to get access to the wing, Rafa slept in. His breath caught. He didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning during yard time, Rafa found Caesar alone near the concrete wall, where the older inmates usually sat. Caesar waved him over. Bad news travels fast, Caesar said. Someone attempted to get inside under a different name. That's not something a small-time criminal does. You think it was Marchow's people? Maybe, Caesar said. But there's something strange. Security said the man wasn't violent. He didn't force his way in. He asked questions. Rafa's stomach twisted. What kind of questions? He asked. Your name, Caesar said. Your cell block. Rafa felt lightheaded. Someone was looking for me? Not to harm you, Caesar said. At least that's their claim. How do you know? Caesar gave a thin smile. Because they left a message behind. For me. Rafa blinked. For you? Why you? Caesar didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled a folded piece of paper from his shirt pocket. He handed it to Rafa. For new words. He knows the truth. Rafa's heart thumped painfully. Who? Me? Caesar looked at him with an expression that held both sympathy and a warning. You were framed, Caesar said. But not by Marchow. At least not alone. Rafa swallowed. Then who? Caesar glanced around the yard before answering. The investigator who handled your file. The one who testified you fled the robbery scene. Rafa's jaw tightened. But I wasn't there. I know, Caesar said. And someone else knows. That's why they're here. Rafa shook his head. But why would an investigator frame me? Caesar lowered his voice even more. Because the robbery wasn't about money. It was a cover. A distraction for something else happening the same night. Something involving people with power. Rafa felt the world tilt. I don't understand. You don't need to, Caesar said. Not yet. All you need to know is this: your case is about to be reopened. The words hit like a bolt of electricity. Reopened? After all this time? Rafa looked at him cautiously. How do you know? Caesar exhaled slowly. Because the man who came here yesterday, the one who left the message. He paused. Is a journalist investigating wrongful convictions tied to corrupt officers. Your name is on his list. Rafa stared at him, stunned. So he wasn't trying to hurt me? No, Caesar said. He was trying to save you. That afternoon, the prison director called Rafa into the administrative office. Two unfamiliar officials were present, both wearing ID badges from Sao Paulo's Justice Oversight Department. Mr. Dos Santos, one of them began. New evidence has been submitted in your case. We're reviewing your conviction. You may be transferred temporarily for questioning. Rafa blinked hard, his pulse racing. After weeks of fear, after months of uncertainty, a door had finally opened. When he was escorted back to Pavilion 9, Caesar was waiting in the corridor. It's happening faster than I thought, the older man said. Rafa smiled weakly. Will they really clear my name? That depends, Caesar replied. Truth is a stubborn thing. But once it starts rising, it doesn't stop. Rafa gripped the bars of his cell, hope swelling inside him for the first time in years. Caesar, why did you help me? Caesar gave a slow, thoughtful smile. Because every prison needs one victory, he said. One reminder that the system doesn't always win. And maybe because I've seen enough innocent men fall while the guilty walk free. Rafa felt a warmth in his chest, something like gratitude, something like relief. For the first time since entering Carandiru, he felt like he might have a future. A real one. A week later, Rafa was transferred to a legal holding facility. Interviews followed, cautious, thorough, professional. The journalist provided his findings. The Oversight Committee found inconsistencies in the original investigation. Witnesses recanted. Documents resurfaced. And finally, unbelievably, the prosecution withdrew their original claim. Rafa was released. When he stepped outside, the world felt too bright, too loud, too real. Reporters asked questions, cameras flashed. But all Rafa could think about was the man who believed him when no one else did. Caesar. Before leaving, Rafa had written him a letter, thanking him, promising he wouldn't waste his second chance. The letter would reach him through official channels. Rafa took a deep breath. Freedom. It didn't erase what happened, but it gave him a beginning. And sometimes beginnings were stronger than endings.